Do you have a side gig or a dream project that you want to pursue, but you're also working a full-time day job? I have been in that situation for almost 5 years, and meanwhile I have produced several sewing books, done I think about 200 YouTube videos, written hundreds of blog posts, put out a handful of sewing patterns and lots more. And was it easy? No. It's been really challenging. The good news is that it's doable. And in today's video, I want to share with you the most important things that I have learned along the way when it comes to figuring out how to make it work when you have this dream project or a side gig or something you're really passionate about and you want to pursue that while also making the rest of your life work. First of all, I think the number one rule is that if it's not on a list, it won't happen. So if you're just waiting for your inspiration to strike and you don't have a clear idea exactly what you're supposed to do, then likely you will not be able to move the needle as much as you would have wanted. So I think the basis is, at least for me, is first of all, write down the things that are a priority in your project. And secondly, do a plan on when during the week, month, year, all those things will happen. Now, of course, all the stuff will happen, especially if you're trying to combine this with all the other things that comes with life. It will not always be easy, but just having that basic system around yourself will be absolutely crucial for getting things done. Now, that list can of course be a digital list, it can be in a notebook, you can use programs such as Trello, Asana, maybe just Google Calendar, iCal. It doesn't really matter. I've used many different methods over the years. Sometimes I get a little bit bored with one and then I switch because I think it's a nice way to sometimes test another thing. So I don't say that there's one system that works, but have a list, make sure that you get your priorities right and allocate time for doing those. Those are absolutely crucial for your productivity. And speaking of focus, another tip that I actually started this year because I've been struggling with motivation, surprise, because as I've talked about this year of 2020, when I'm recording this video, I think many of us has gone through bouts where things hasn't felt that fun and motivation has been lacking, energy has been an all-time low, everything feels pointless. But sometimes it can actually be good to kind of break out of that spell by just doing something little. And that's why I started to use the Pomodoro Method. I'm sure many of you have already heard of it, but if you haven't, it's a method that means that you break your work sequences or your study sequences into smaller chunks of time. There are lots of apps you can check out for this, but usually the most common sequence is that you do 25 minutes of work, then you have a 5-minute break, then you do 25 minutes of work, have a 5-minute break, and I think after the third or fourth 25-minute sequence, many apps has a longer break, so you can actually take like a snack break or something like that, because most of the time those shorter breaks are just 5 minutes. Now, of course, you can set your own time sequences for that, but I do find that if there's something for me like accounting, let's be real, Excel files, I can at least do 25 minutes of that. That really removes that hurdle that I set for myself. So I highly recommend that you are struggling with just getting started, because you feel like, oh, I have such a momentous task, I need to do so many things, and it's such a overwhelming feeling. Instead of twisting it around and saying, I don't need to produce all this blah blah blah, I just need to do 25 minutes of it and then we'll see how I feel. And I've been really happy with how the Pomodoro Method has worked for me. So if that's something you are struggling with, maybe it's worth giving it a try. I'm sure there are other methods for this as well, but that's the one I am most familiar with. And also when it comes to focus, I am a strong believer in cancelling outside distractions when you're in your focus zone. Again, that can be many different things. I know some people like to use like white noise tools. I actually rely on Spotify playlists that usually have the word focus or productivity in the playlist name. There are lots of different playlists. I can definitely link to a few in the description section if you want to check them out. There are, slow, like classical, and there are more like ambient music. There are more like up-tempo music. So I'm pretty sure, regardless of your musical taste, I'm pretty sure that you will be able to find something like that. So what I do when I need to have those focused periods, I just put on my headphone, pick one of those playlists, and also, of course, ideally use the Pomodoro Method. When I create that environment for myself, I do find that I have a much easier time to really focus. I definitely think you need some type of structure to really be able to gain some momentum. So for instance, it has taken many different forms for me. When I was working on my sewing books, I also designed the interiors. So what I did was that I woke up 1 hour earlier at 6 o'clock instead of 7, so that I sat for an hour. I put on some relaxing, non-vocal music, had a cup of tea, and then just went into the zone and worked for an hour until 7 o'clock. Then I had a quick breakfast, and then I went out to my day. That was, for me, something I did just to make sure that I kept, progressing with my books, even though I was super busy. So that's one of the ways that it can work for you. Another option is, of course, that you set aside 1 hour late in the evening when all your responsibilities are out of the way. I think the most important thing is to don't expect that you will be able to get some magic free time to appear, because unfortunately it doesn't really work out in the real world. So even though I know some people really don't like structure, I think that in order to get your product moving, you definitely need to find some type of structure. And as I said, what type of structure you choose, that is very personal, because as I said, there is nothing intrinsically valuable about going up 1 hour early in the morning. I mean, for other people it could be that you spend every Sunday working on your side project, or it can, as I said, it can be that you spend the evenings working on that, maybe 9 o'clock in the evening. If you want to accomplish things in this way with those time restrictions, you have to make certain sacrifices. That's just the way it is. And I think if you know this and you understand and accept and embrace that, it becomes much more easier to actually, accepting that this is a fact that, I will perhaps be getting a slightly less sleep. I mean, it's very important to take care of yourself, which I will talk about in just a minute here. But I also think that you have to understand, that certain sacrifices will have to be made. That's just the way it is, basically. And just listen to yourself if you see that those sacrifices becomes too much. It's, of course, very important to step back. But if you are struggling with finding a routine and focus, then making sure that you have a dedicated time, it's absolutely crucial, I think. So many things will be a struggle. So if you don't have that like inner drive that, all things considered, this is something very much enjoyable for you, I honestly think that it will become a struggle eventually to keep going, because even those of us that are doing something that we really enjoy still occasionally struggle with motivation. But if you're not even able to have that initially, I definitely think that it's a good idea to reassess and see if you can fine-tune things. You don't have to completely do a 180-degree pivot, but perhaps there are some things in your project or your side gig that you can tweak a little bit to make it more fun and more motivating. So definitely also another thing that I think is very important to consider when you're doing this stuff. To connect with people in similar situation. I think this is the number one key factor to success, honestly. And luckily, we have so many ways now to connect with people virtually. So seek out peers that are doing similar things, that perhaps are in either the same phase as you or perhaps a couple of steps ahead of you. Whatever you feel that you need to connect with, and meet up with those, of course, in persons right now. As I'm recording this in 2020, it's not easy, but luckily, you can have a Skype meeting, connect on Zoom, do email, FaceTime, just have some type of connection outside yourself, because one of the things that you will discover if you're doing a side gig on your own is it can get really lonely, and the best way of igniting that energy and motivation again is to have those other people that you can talk to, get suggestion, share your struggles, and just feed off the energy that comes with having other people to connect with. So I think that is so undervalued. And as I said, I think it's the number one key factor for most people to be able to keep going, especially when the going gets tough. I'm no stranger to burnout. I have experienced this several times, and I do think that it comes in cycles. For me, it has been a situation where every 3 or 4th year into a project or a side gig that I'm working on, that is kind of where it hits me. That is where I start to see that things start to feel more difficult. I start to question whether or not this is actually meaningful. I have a problem finding the motivation and the energy, because I think having a new idea or a new project is very similar to those early phases of being in love, if you know what I mean. Because when you have that new idea energy, all you want to do is to work on it. You want to create. You want to tell everyone about it. You're absolutely passionate. There's a fire inside of you. You oftentimes have to prevent yourself from working because you just want to work all the time. But unfortunately, that is not a feeling that will last year in and year out. And what I think is so important, and I'm here to tell you, is that it's absolutely normal to feel that way. Everyone, I guarantee you, will go through that exact emotional journey at one point or another. For some people, it might come quicker. For some people, it might be delayed, but it will eventually happen. So don't be too hard on yourself if you start experiencing it that, because it doesn't really have to mean it's the end. Just take a step back, assess your situation, try to figure out, why am I feeling this way? And it's okay to remove a few of those things that maybe isn't as fun anymore. You don't have to clench your jaw and hustle. You don't have to do that. You can actually take a step back and see if there are things that give you more enjoyment within this side project. And oftentimes there actually are. So maybe you just have to tweak it a little bit. Rest and recovery. That is so important. So if you are embarking on this side gig journey, or if you're already on it, just as important to schedule when you're doing your tasks. It's just as important to make time for rest and recovery. That can take many forms. We have many ways of achieving the same thing. It can be connecting with other people. It can be exercise. It can be mindless activities, binge watching Netflix for an entire day. Anything that makes it work for you is what you should do. And do that without guilt. And I know that's easier said than done. I am struggling with this myself, let me tell you. But I have never, ever regretted taking time off and stepping away from my project. And finally, I just want to share some more words of advice, and that is be patient. Because if you're doing this on the side with all the other responsibilities eating up most of your day, don't compare yourself to someone who's doing the same thing full time, because that is not your situation. So if you notice that that person has done so much more than you have. Remind yourself that you do not have access to the same amount of hours every day. But remember that slow and steady will allow you to accomplish amazing things long term. So just that extra hour a day, or that day on the weekend, or whatever structure you set around working towards a goal, doing that regularly, just like exercise, it will just keep on creating more momentum, more build up, and you will eventually see all those fruits of your hard labor. So just be patient, don't stress out about it, because it will happen. And the magic, as I said, is just understanding how to plan, how to take care of yourself, and finding something that you feel truly, truly invested in. I hope that you found this advice useful, and please share your experience if you're in a similar situation or are thinking about starting a side gig, so we can keep this dialogue going, because there are so many aspects that goes into this. And if you have more ideas for topics that I could address in another video, please of course also share in the comment section, because I would love to keep this conversation going, as I know so many of you has also things that you want to do aside from those day-to-day responsibilities. Thank you so much for watching. Stitch safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!